can create one. Lowercase m, uppercase r, lowercase b, uppercase l, lowercase d, lowercase p. Are you ready, Kevin? Okay. Ready? Okay. Starting now. Inherency, the defense industrial base is subject to DoD control. Its failing SciComm means to take over Chapel and Ally Team. Weapon systems are subject to control to DoD organizations such as Cyber Command supports some aspects of weapon system cybersecurity. However, they are not responsible for the current state of DoD weapon system cybersecurity failure and DoD's nascent understanding of how best to develop more cybersecure weapon systems. Trump rescinded PPD-20, set stage for aggressive use of offensive cyber operations, Johnson 18. Trump rescinded PPD-20, freeing up U.S. cyber warriors to engage in offensive conflict. Christopher Painter, former cyber tornado, indicated that the change could be an improvement on the status quo or setback depending on what the replacement policy is. Contention to his military weapons. The industrial base is vulnerable to cyber attacks. Consensus of independent analysts, Groll 18. U.S. weapon systems are vulnerable to cyber attacks. The U.S. Government Accountability Office worked to test has routinely found missing critical cyber vulnerabilities in nearly all weapon systems. Catastrophic effects in the event of war and attack to alter what U.S. warship are seeing on their radar screens. They can manipulate computer systems to cause navigational errors. Independent analysts of law and warned these vulnerabilities that affect U.S. nuclear weapon systems with catastrophic effects. Weapons are compromised through the counterfeit parts or backdoors into the cyber supply chain, renders weapons inoperable and exploitable. Better acquisitions practices T-16. The biggest problem, the large number of counterfeit products that continue to inundate the cyber supply chain. The economic and safety issues involved with it are indefinable and undeniable. Because they should be so grave, the DoD must build trust into its cyber supply chain, mitigate the risk that counterfeit parts have on national defense. These counterfeits risk backdoors of catastrophic defense, disabling or impairing critical DoD systems and weapons. Preventing these backdoors is crucial. The weak industrial base allows cyber espionage, other active steal weaponry plans uproots hegemony, old Zeus 18. The technological race in the field of defense targets attacks by cyber armed forces aimed at contractors of the U.S. Army. This is about the widespread exploitation of hardware gaps. Cyber espionage, one of the most dangerous cyber criminal activities. Cyber attacks have become effective tools for theft of military secrets due to the low risk of revealing the actual source of such an attack. Stealing information about the F-35 resulted in the appearance of a Chinese-cloned J-31 cyber weapon when used significantly weakened Army capability and the desire to conduct effective countermeasures. A vulnerable military-industrial base leads to conventional nuclear escalation, with Russia, China, North Korea, Palestinian allies 18. The defense industrial base enables the United States to produce and sustain the world's leading military. The vulnerability of supply chains to cyber attacks and espionage. The United States failed to anticipate Russia, North Korea, China's gray zone threats have we adequately prepared for conventional arms victory. Weapon systems are needed bound on the Korean Peninsula sustained by the United States military. That same United States is not keeping up with China deterrence to bedrock the peace to denuclearize and or is having squandered strategic leverage. Other countries' capabilities to hack weapons undermines heads, leading to nuclear catastrophe. The Economist 18. Even now, America and North Korea are perilously close to a conflict that risks dragging in China or escalating to nuclear catastrophe. Powerful long-term shifts in the proliferation of new technologies are eroding the extraordinary military dominance that America and its allies have enjoyed. Even a limited attack to trigger all-out war, unprecedented economic growth provided China with wealth to transform its armed forces. Their moment has come. Russia needs to assert itself now. Its leaders, willing to take risks to prove they deserve respect of America, allow China and Russia to establish regional hegemonies that will have given them a green light to pursue their interests by brute force. When that was the last try to result in the First World War, America was fast losing the edge in military technology. Retrenchment ends economic interdependence, causes nuclear proliferation war, spikes nationalism, causing destructive interventions. Phase 17. United States retrenches a world of increased nationalism, increased the spread of nuclear weapons. Some states fail to balance against threats, increasing the likelihood the United States will be drawn to a major war. Nationalist troops within a country can seize on these sentiments to pursue confrontational and expansive policies. A road to pacify and offensive economic openness to possess nuclear weapons will become an attractive option for some states whose security was previously guaranteed by the United States. Nuclear weapons will be used absent U.S. security guarantees. Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea would build nuclear arsenals of their own. Hacking into the industrial supply chain increases the probability of nuclear miscalculation. Multiple warrants to balance its scene. The United States military-industrial complex is the world's fattest espionage target. Information warfare to money. The signals being sent from one side to the other, and crisis disrupted communications to prevent top leaders from knowing that military commanders perceived the situation to be far more desperate and thus permissive of nuclear initiative than it really was. Partially misinformed and disinformed networks and communication centers would have led to redundant attacks against the same target sets and unplanned attacks on friendly military or civilian installations. Information warfare can cause flawed images of each side's intentions and capabilities to be conveyed to the other with potentially disastrous results. Contention 3 is solvency. That's the plan. The United States federal government should direct the United States Cyber Command to protect the defense industrial base by streamlining the acquisition process, rigorously vetting contractors, and funding red teams to discover cyber vulnerabilities and fix those vulnerabilities. Right 17. Challenges can be traced to the rapid explosion of technology and the inability of governments to acquisition tough triality standards and rigorous expensive inspects and our effective countermeasures. Streamline the acquisition process. Contracting language provide accountability and penalties. Red teaming testing of key weapon systems and critical components to enhance reliability. This initiative should be expanded to include larger numbers of weapon systems. Inclusions run in laboratory settings must also be war-tamed and validated. This will enable leaders to think through the ramifications of system failures to develop alternate solutions. DoD manufacturing plants, industrial controls, and supply chains are compromised. Empirically, South White 17. Adversaries now possess the ability to disrupt economic systems, to manage control infrastructure, and to take weapon systems. The United States has made significant headway in the integration of cyber into its operations since the activation of the U.S. Cyber Command. After significant investment of time and resources, the Army has made substantial progress towards the achievement of the same. However, the cyber capabilities of America's enemies continue to evolve. To counter this threat, the same level of effort invested in safeguarding the Army's networks and information systems must now be committed toward protecting its armaments and its ability to sustain them. Framework: I get to radiant pets of NEC against any K. Otherwise, he moves 6 minutes of NEC offense, which kills off procedural fairness. They can still K my message. They just have to implicate to a reason a normative statement to the planet's files that sells out their offense. Their framework means they can win off an epistemological indict to one sentence of the NEC, which they can always do if I say a single thing that's incorrect. If the planet's on balance, a good idea is to vote for making them cease the NEC's files. Reducing existential risk on number one priority cost himself. Existential catastrophe is rate in 10 to 16 human lives of value if reducing existential risk by 1 million 1 percentage point. So it's 100 times. I cut the card at percentage point is on Boston
which
12.
Card? I couldn't even tell which one you were
on
reading.
Bostrom 12 at the bottom.
Bostrom?
I read all of solvency and inherency in military weapons.
No, you're framing stuff. Where'd you actually stop?
I stopped on the card, on the Bostrom card at 1 millionth of 1 percentage point.
Where's this Bostrom card?
It's
the first one. So you went the framework and then the card.
I sent It's the other card. Yeah,
I know. I'm saying you swapped. You read the framing stuff, and then you went with the card.
Yes, yes. This is a yes. I did change the speed stock for finals.
Oh, okay, good. Ready?
Yes.
Okay. So for your plan, so you're streamlining the acquisition process and then vetting. Do we not do vetting now?
We don't do sufficient vetting.
So how is your vetting any more superior than the vetting that we're having now? Where does your card actually indicate the differences?
The card indicates that we need to have red teams test weapon systems for vulnerabilities.
Yeah, we already have red teams that work in the Army. Your card literally says that already. But I'm saying, how is that any different than what we're doing now? How are you solving for the problems you're bringing up?
We are solving by having more of an effort, by having stricter standards for contractors, and by having a streamlined acquisition
process. I got that. What are these stricter things these contractors are going to have? You can't just say streamline acquisition and not explain how that's streamlined compared to what we're doing now. So what is that?
For one thing, we put Cyber Command in it. The inherency demonstrates Cyber Command.
Okay, Cyber Command's now in there. Now, what does Cyber Command do to make it faster?
In terms of streamline the acquisition process, you mean?
Our vetting, what is it different than the inherent, the status quo right now? How does your plan make it different?
Because we subject them to being vetted by Cyber Command, not the DoD.
The DoD and Cyber Command are the same thing, but...
Well, the chaplain at our evidence in the first card on my inherency indicates that parts of the DoD other than Cyber Command are responsible for weapon system cybersecurity now.
Okay, so they're going to streamline... They're protecting what? The industrial base? What's that even mean?
What I mean by the defense industrial base is the part of our critical infrastructure that does manufacturing and R&D for...
So what's the streamlining? We're going to streamline their ability to make this stuff?
And to acquire cyber capabilities in order.
Which tools? Are these the offense or defensive stuff?
Defensive.
Only defense. Even though the word defense for industrial base doesn't actually mean defense.
I mean, we're defending the cybersecurity that makes offensive weapons.
But you're Okay, are you streamlining the weapons being made, or are you streamlining the process of vetting them?
I'm streamlining the process of acquiring cyber capabilities to protect them.
Okay. One more time, because I know this is not going to make any sense to me until probably the last minute into the speech. How is this vetting different? Alan, I actually need to know. How is this vetting an improvement of what we're doing? You can't say red teams when your own card says that you're already doing that in laboratories with the Army. So how is this different?
We impose it on contractors, whereas right now the red teams are not done everywhere, not done for contractors.
Taking prep. his 303 was, so I'm gonna say I used 303. I'm just saving the dog. And I'll roadmap the on positions. For the case of off, it's going to be the solvency first. He kind of has his app written a different way. It's going to be the solvency, then the advantages, and then that framing stuff. Good, Alan.
Just a second. Loading. Stop this. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, are we good? Yep, cool.
First can be vagueness interpretation when it must the affirmative plan text must contain topical mandates actions to show its sufficiency to prove that the plan solves for the propensity to solve. NFA 18 the affirmative is required to plan and plan and method and instrument burdens the plan is identified and should be sufficient to proving the plan propensity to solve the problem's area. And violation the app text does not contain all topical mandates of the plan or show propensity to solve. Next, the app literally when you look to his app, he literally can never tell you the difference between the acquisition problem is happening now or the acquisition will happen later. Doesn't give you an indication how these red teams are any improving, especially when his own cards are saying there's already happening in laboratories now. Doesn't give you any reason why there's any different than status quo. This is just unbelievably vague. And this can be reasons to prefer. 1. Plan and vacuum plans are the only stable locus of containing the debate and therefore should be evaluated through a vacuum. Next, can be predictability of the vague plans. Create a moving target, meaning he will never be able to predict what he's actually doing. His app mean I never get to generate specific links to a dissats or generate specific links to a criticism. He's literally going to come up here and try to give you all these new reasons on how his acquisition purpose is going to be any different from the dissats that I read against him. Makes it impossible to debate him because he can just sever out and change the view of what his app is doing later on. We need to put him to a concrete plan to actually know what he's doing, and we cannot get that through his solvency advocate, which he's probably going to try to expand, which is solvency advocate literally says nothing. Next, going to be limits. Vague plans explode the limits, exploding the negative research burden. Literally, he can get up here and say any aspect of his plan can happen. He can just say fancy words about cybersecurity, and he's have to look into research for every little thing. It makes it impossible to ever be that. Next, it justifies extra topicality because it allows for non-topical links to be put into his plan, making it impossible for me to ever predict its mean grounds. They ask you in our grounds to vague plans, make it impossible to generate dissat links and competitive counter plans and test. It doesn't allow us to test solvency or his vague our inherency. Next to me, the voters. Reason articulated above and for because of NSALD's rules that state they have to show a propensity to solve and uphold stock issue. Next to me, truth testing. There's no way to ever test the claims that he's actually doing because he's always be able to repurpose what his plan is doing and never give you an advocacy that's stable to the cards that he's reading. Next to me, the dissad. You can title it leaks. 1. The app is using academic basis overblown toward for 14. Unmotivated research of tendency and biases. And the military experts proclaim active activities, a new kind of war, and new context away from general accepting theories of war. A mixture of these defense results in overwhelming doom scenario. And I'm not reading that card. Next is going to be cyber hype is inflated in order to moving economic gains for 14. The changing perspective possible cyber attacks and scenarios and those impact proliferation in cyber scenarios. The money gets spent, the vendors spend those money in lobbying. When a Cold War bombers and freezes in ways and stakeholders parties and going aggressive threats that lead to unjustified super defense spending and the name of national security. And cyber tools and tactics will be stolen and repurposed, meaning that never all these acquisition tools he's doing doesn't change the core problem that these people are making money and they're always going to be moving up the cycle to continue to have these weapons that way they can say there's holes in them that way can be purposed. He never gives you a reason why his red teams are ever going to be resolved these issues. Therefore, we'll let him extend it here. That's exactly the reason why we're running that vagueness to protect myself in this link. Next to me, the winning 18. We both work the criminal goods are both sharing the tools and government returning the payment. And these tools were accidentally leaked and disorderly stolen. They're further way down the food chain and hang up in the hands of hackers. Many countries are sitting on real time bombs and defending and critical infrastructure. Next to me, the base. 1. Trump's base is staying with him now, but it's wavering number 19. Trump has framing a pledge and has keeping of the core supporters Democratic parties is steering a major, keeping his congressional base support in a major house that has been dividing Congress and possibility impeachment president could begin. And Trump will use the plan as a tool to regain his base support. He'll spin this narrative as national security. Green 18. The term national security is commonly used. The Trump appears in the term and applied in crouching and string and symbolize the political base and only support from Trump. Republicans' base is keeping Trump from impeachment easily. 17. The Trump is only thing saving Trump from popular base is Congress unlikely to severe investigation about the president. No Trump president is in the is close for impeachment, setting up a perfect storm for expolitical scandal, and reaching impeachment would take the nation ablaze. And Trump escalates hotspots to nuclear war, clause 17. Trump is likely to force a crisis entirely at risk of nuclear war, and given the Trump administration adversary should be expecting a number of responses. Every crisis in a nuclear state may be proving a nuclear crisis. And next to me, the criticism. One, you can title Jarreau. One, we're the highest state in racist terror, sophisticating the black and brown body. Jarreau 16. The race is fully blown, full of domestic terrorism. White officers are following, screaming, Black lives do not matter. Black people and people are witnessing the culture of violence and most violent role in entertainment and policy, witnessing the legitimacy of society, deeply entrenched in white supremacy. And for links to reform like this is impediment, automate social movements and hinder the underlying white supremacy within the state. Jarreau 16. Cultures do not challenge society, simply gives a veil of legitimacy and can be fixed. It cannot be fixed. Do not address the larger structural violence and transforming through ongoing mobilization, developing social movements, and threat construction drives the neoliberal state, allowing them to promote promotional gains and cyber tools. Madison 15. The words in cyber incidents may be things of fear and reality, creating self-fulfilling prophecies, and internet security companies are perceiving the benefits and the gaining in those systematic construction of cyber fears. And neoliberal state devalues the black community. Devaluation can be seen through the shrinking investment in critical infrastructure. This turns their case because we'll never be able to solve for the critical infrastructure or solve for the industrial complex because they're always making so they'll never protect the people they seem less valuable. Paul 16. Abandonment can see the shrinking and infrastructure investment through only racial devaluation considerable and capable of stimulation. This is testing ground for new forms of neoliberal practices that become increasingly common and impact the unfetishized legitimacy of state-sponsored terror, leads to physical and ontological destruction of color flesh. Row 16, where fear and terror becomes a organized principle society, we balance becomes a only valid control. The system fails doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, is punish those decisions dangerous or disposable, and racism already dehumanizing racial ideology, allow for the black body disposable, and rethinks the option and breaks down the war between the haves and the have-not. Walker 17, racism structure to enhance our way of thinking because we seek to evaluate the world around rosy optics is changing the consequences of the violence of black folks rendered invisible and continues to rise. Next, the alternative. The term because rejecting the false hope based in liberal reforms embedded in the affirmative kicks the pedal to task to break down the development of new modes of subjectivity, embracing interpersonal social movements and democracy and interpersonal movements. Row 16. First, there needs to be a change in collective consequences about the democracy of this agent subject necessary to challenging the range of anti-Marxist practicing neoliberal states and ideology, motives, and government, and improving democratic values, experiencing civil responsibility. This includes any cultural appropriation, development, developing modes of subjectivity. This need a massive movement to district organizations and root cause of the problem. Imagining for this kind of society with real genuine democracy and social matters aim. Democracy on life support in the United States and work within the system is just a dead end and gaining short reforms on case. First, he has no inherency. The AF leaves out a critical part of their evidence in their inherency card showing that DoD has failed in the past, but it's already being fixed. You look at the yellow part on their card. It says that DoD is the past is already the DoD in the past is failure. The DoD necessary understanding how developing more critical cyber weapons and systems in the past. In this part, the DoD historical focus on the cybersecurity nations of no weapon systematic themselves in the DoD early stage in trying to understand how these apply to cybersecurity and weapon systems and no inherency. Johnson 18 does not provide an inherency barrier in the plan. It allows for Trump to allow aggressive use of the cyber operation. The plan does not say that he has any burden not to do this. Next, no solvency. The winning 17 card specifically is detailing army streamlining inefficient foot soldier surveillance. This has nothing to do with Cyber Command. It favors underlying the streamlining acquisition about the army. The army established a red team with missions and deploying a newly enemy and documented method to army and joint organization develop brilliant red teams and testing weapons and critical components to liberally and arm enhancing surveillance. Next on the solvency. All the rest of the solvency. One, Trump, turn of the after focus on inflated cyber threats and national tension, Cast Bill 12. The establishment of cyber threats and focal point Highland dread and NSC about the unknown identifiable enemy and suggesting no control over the cyberspace to creating unnecessary atmosphere where war and international tension rises and allowing the military to take control of infrastructure causes military more war. 12 for 14. When the U.S. attack and transfers use military means of causing targeted countries to counterattack in that war. For the sake of the doc, just cut down where it says waiting 18 and down. Let me.
Okay, I'm ready now. Okay, what is the status of the alt? So you can kick the alt.
Status quo is always an option. The rules indicate that I'm allowed one counter proposal and to defend the status quo. So your idea that I'm only allowed to do one is just setting against the rules. But we can have that debate if you'd like.
Okay, so also on your document, what would an example of a plan text that meets your vagueness?
It's not the plan text is the issue, but there was one violation that says plan text in a vacuum, but it's also the way that your solvency is being written. It doesn't actually tell us the differences of what the status quo is doing and what your plan is doing. Your solvency is literally a description of the current state. You have to tell us how you overcome that. You can't just say that you do.
So,
but also plan in vacuum doesn't show any sufficient ability to solve. Like your plan should have told us what the mechanism you're using to streamline this acquisition or improve the red team's efficiency in dealing with this.
What's the impact? Okay, what's the impact to your leaks this ad?
Well, you could. It's two things. One, it's an impact, and it's a terminal no solvency for you. It's saying that these tools are just going to be repurposed and sold because their whole tactic is that they want to continue making money. So they like to act like your acquisition problem. They're going to go to these vendors, get these programs, or get these tools, and they're going to just find vulnerabilities, and they're not going to say anything, and they're just going to keep selling these tools. That way, they're able to keep making money by fixing these holes. It's a never-ending cycle where they keep making tools that have these holes, and they say they fix them. And you don't really give an indication of how your red teams are going to be any different in dealing with this scenario post RP4 plan. So you would never be able to solve your acquisition because those holes would still be there.
Okay, on the case, so do you collapse the state?
No, that's not the argument.
So
I'm saying working within the system to do these things is a dead end, and we have to take a different avenue to try to solve for these issues.
Okay, are there any instances in which
Yes.
working within the system is good?
Working within the system? In this instance, no. Working with the system is just making more short-term reforms. We try to make it seem like we're solving these issues, but it just takes away the steam from the movements that are actually doing these things.
Okay, what comes first, T or K?
Huh? I like rules, so I'll go with the rules first. But if you're going to read your condo stuff, none of that's based in any actual rules. It's based upon rules that you decide.
Okay, also,
so it's not really the same argument.
So your DA, so how does the K interact with your DA about the Trump base?
Okay, so I know where you're going to go. You're going to say the fact that I'm using an impact is security logic, but the the link on the criticism is particularly talking about the industrial complex of cyberspace that allows for this sphere to mean and drive more security tools. That's a very distinguished link when you're comparing it to impacts of security that are coming from the disad. You're going to try to conflate the idea of security, threat con, and militarization. They're three fundamental different things, and you have to understand that if you're going to make those arguments.
Taking prep.
Do you guys need to revise doc, or are you guys good?
Actually, a revised doc would be nice.
There you go, same here.
53 seconds left. I'm saving the doc now. 53. The order's going to be new seat vagueness followed by the leaks dissad and then case. Some of the same arguments are going to be on both positions, and then it will be the new seat vagueness, leaks, case. Some of the same arguments will apply to both. Yes, the F, then the base dissad, then the woe. And the inherency stuff I have on case.
New sheet, vagueness, leaks dissad, base dissad, criticism.
You ready, everyone? First off is condo interpretation. A negative should not be allowed to read conditional counterplans for teacher advocacies. You violate cross-sets proving state to satisfy is always an option, which means that you are conditional, meaning under the conditions when you can remove the advocacy from the debate. Standards. One is substantive class. This strat incentivizes slew of condo and weak off-case positions that no one can discuss in depth or consistently broad discussions. Remove detailed debates and critical research skills, forcing the name to sit to their advocacy is key to portable skills and reflects real-world policy making. Reciprocity. Apps can several other plan or plans, let alone kick an advantage for self defense. Nay gets in us an over position on top of T, giving Nay destructible advantage in the NR. We do the 1AR and date and wipe away any offense they don't like, such as our relinks, hold them to a stable argumentative table. Vote is fairness and education. The intended debate is to expand critical thinking and offer a balanced route to the ballot. Vote for the debater whose interp best meets that drop the debater's most logical, since their strategy is bad for debate. I can't adequately answer it. Rules of the game to the default paradigm for judging, and it takes that they get only one counter proposal must meet the same sounds you vote for an MDF 15 means they don't recognize the CP doesn't solve when you vote half on presumption. On vagueness. First argument is I mean my plan test was as clear and precise necessary. There's no bright line between what clear and precise is and what it is not, and we do have enough to prove propensity to solve. It is impossible to meet. You don't say exactly how specific it needs to be, and that's going to be counterinterpretation. The ideological basis for the plan test must exist within the literature, and the plan test must have an action, a method of cybersecurity, and direction of that action. I meet the counter-interpretation case shows the ideological basis of the plan, which the United States is the mathematics of the plan, as the acid in red teams plus vetting is a cybersecurity method, and the acid directed at the DIB. Reason to prefer ground. My interpretation provides each for predictable access to ground for all debaters. Your interpret enables me to be extra-topical and read often from extra-topical sources like to say direct tats that would give me ground you can't prepare for inferior out of ground limits. My interpretation limits the necessities for a plan test to the most reasonable expectations. Otherwise, you'll have to spend the entire PMC specifying, which means that the neg would always win on presumption. This is particularly true in the instance of cybersecurity, because if we increase something we are already doing, you can read offense about why that is bad instead of having us spend the entire speech talking about details. Reasonability. My interpretation places a reasonable burden of research on both teams, a reasonable burden of specification for the affirmative. On links. This DA is linear. You have conceded that the defense industrial base is being hacked into status quo. We've conceded that. Nets droop their arguments about the Academy affair with the threats not real on case. Military hype goes the other way. Defense set contractors have an incentive deposit the military industrial base is an epicenter of strength, so it seems like they are successful in to deter other countries better trust applied vol. DoD officials and contractors refuse to believe that their weapons are compromised. My evidence is the consensus of independent analysts conducting empirical studies means their securitization. My threats are real trust supply. Old Zeus empirically. Muslim China concedes conducted cyber espionage, stealing U.S. military plans. China stole F-12 plans to make their own similar F-35 plans to make their own similar fighter planes. Trust supply at an litany of parts in U.S. weapons of counterfeits from Muslim sign on other adversarial countries. Threats are real, not construct actions here to prevent them, not to one. Threats are seen as coming mainly from the after zone fields. This emphasis on the subjectivism is linked to concepts of trend that discounted independent distance for whatever is perceived as a threat. Political life is often marked by misperceptions, but such phenomena do not occur simultaneously. Large numbers of politicians and hardly most of the time during the Cold War. Threats in the sense of plausible possibilities of things refer to real phenomena. They refer to real phenomena. Now, touch the card at now. Your trope is 14 cards saying military and control of infrastructure results in military responses. A few responses. A, it's then he says it's already militarized and on the 8B. The DoD is already in control of a set of critical infrastructure, defense industrial base. Stop there on base. Trump's base is drastically down to the trip to link Montenegro 19. President Trump's approval rating is down with his base. A new poll finds Trump's approval laying down and his disapproval laying up from months ago. Your sublime evidence doesn't say the basis for President Trump now. It just says he is trying to hold on to him. Your Karen 14 is titled for President Trump national security to means us about anything this is not inevitable. It says immigrations, for example, mean the national emergency. So the trip to 018. Trump's emphasis on securing national borders and rolling back immigration now is wrapped in the argument that nations will be safer. Also, constant tensions with China, North Korea, and Russia have treated clear 17 already no impact. Also, this is the politics. This added a real link to criticism because you affirm a normative notes in a politician. Your argument that we shouldn't do this because of how Trump's base would react is an example of state engagement relinked is worse than a link because of murder v. manslaughter. You knew this was, that you knew you believed this was bad, but still did. On decay, it's said that we get to wait a few out impacts of the AFN. Also, it thinks in outways we can't engage in critical interrogation if we are dead. Also, policy simulation allows us to more effectively influence state policy and keto agency studies prove Heitzman 12. Policy simulation derived power from simulation, game simulation, role-playing limits to create possible futures, allow selective action in a safe environment. Of policy simulation is dedicated aim to achieve proficiency in policy development. Simulation develop knowledge and skills in policy developments. Focus on individual survival strategies, practice self-delective presences, used to justify structural violence, you see the political tree. Public pedos even have to analyze and privatize individualized analysis and the ongoing depoliticization of the public sphere. Public life is empty of debate to elective agency. The ideology of going it alone first to miss that all social problems are the result of individual choices. It actually reinforces conservative ideology by suggesting that collective problems can only be addressed as tales of individual survival, suggesting that life is colonized by the private cutoff from larger social, economic, and political. Issues renders hope private, cut the carded private, also perm duty, affin duty, K in every other instance. We say this creates a double bind where either the K can sell for all of its harms or it can overcome the exception, the affirmative, and to overcome the exception, the affirmative, or there's no solvency. Also, you haven't one specific indite to the method of the affs the framework you can see it. Now going to inherency. We say that we are inherent, because we do more than we are doing in the status quo. The point that you say we leave out says that the DoD is still in the early stage of trying to understand. We push that understanding further. Also, the Johnson 18 card doesn't have to prove inherency. We just have to prove Cybercom is not in control, which we did on the no solvency about Byte 17. We're applying the Army's method to cybersecurity, which does establish inherency because the Army is using red teams. We just put it into contractors in the defense industrial base.
Should we save this doc real quick? So the roadmap is going to be the the condo sheet,
Then it's going to be the vagueness. Condo. Actually, not even vagueness. Condo. Disadd. Other. Condo leaks. Base. K. Does that make any sense?
Okay. Okay, I'm ready now.
Okay, actually. Okay. Cool. Very good. First on the condo, I made his interpretation. I never actually said I was condo. You can't just clarify cross-sex if I don't actually ever admit to being condo because you don't really understand that you're misconstruing what I'm saying in cross-sex. Also, I give you a counter-interpretation that we should, the negative team is allowed one counter-proposal and defend the status quo, meaning we should be defaulting to that because that's actually what the rules say of NFALD instead of just what he wants me to be able to do in round. He's just adding more abuse. He's the one making up these rules. That way he's able to justify argumentation and try to get me out of being able to run my strategies. He's decentralizing us being able to have creative arguments because he's just saying that we're not allowed to do certain things based on his own interpretation of it on the standards. Yeah, on the violation, no violation on the standards. He says this gets rid of clash. I argue that he's wrong when we're doing multiple advocacy. Well, when we're taking advocacies and we're able to test the competition of the affirmative, it actually gets more case-specific education because we get to learn about those critical aspects of the round instead of just getting it skewed to only thinking of doing argumentations of that. How does it make any sense that I'm allowed to drop out of a disadd, but I'm not allowed to round out of a counter plan? How does it make any sense that he's allowed to drop his advantages and I'm not allowed to drop the counter out of a counter plan or alternative? He gives you no reason why these are any different. So you should be referring to that also. And if he doesn't just drop down to the condo position by itself, it's literally the same thing he's doing. Next, he says repetition. Yeah, you should be voting him down if he does the exact same thing. I'm allowed to kick out of all the other positions. Why is it just this one? We would never turn this argument if I was kicking out of a topicality. This makes no sense, meaning he's just restructuring the way we're trying to think of debate. He gives no real reason why we shouldn't look there. Next, go to the voters and fairness and education. He says it'll be limited down, but no, he's actually killing all creative thinking and critical thinking when it comes to criticisms that actually have to do with critiquing the state. He doesn't allow us to get those accesses because he says that we're no longer allowed to do things under his interpretation. He's the one killing the education in this round. Next is rule of the games. Yeah. He says default to a paradigm of judging indicates the one counter proposal. No, it doesn't. The rules actually indicate that I'm allowed to defend the status quo. Therefore, him applying new aspects of the rules should be voted down there. You should be kicking his argumentation. It doesn't make any sense. You would never vote you would never vote F on presumption just because he says the ways that we're playing the rules are incorrect. That doesn't make any sense. On to the vagueness. On the vagueness, he doesn't read you any actual warranted out offensive arguments on here, so don't give him any credence to try to come up here and expand it. I'm not going for this mission anyways. Next, go to the leaks. He makes a terrible mistakes on the leaks where he just says these are linear and he says I don't ever he answers with his case. He never reads you RD cards. He never tells you anything on how his red teams are able to overcome the burden of that. Yeah, this was an inside of the status quo and how you're not overcoming it. Meaning this acts as one, I get full access to the impact because he does not answer it. Two, it acts as terminal no solvency on his case. He can never overcome the leaks that are happening there. You already voted him down there. Next here, the Trump disadd. He tries to read this argumentation on Trump saying that his base is going down. Now he reads a card from way outside, the realm of uniqueness. My card is way more up to date. It's already putting this into context. Yeah, his base is going down. That's why we're reading the card that way. That's the uniqueness scenario. His base is going down. We should allow it to continue. Your plan changes that. You don't read any indications on how it's different. He tries to indict my link card saying that the evidence says that anything Trump would do. I say this is a unique time now. This because we're on the brink of Trump's investigations getting further on, and this is exactly why we shouldn't be allowing any policies that are going to be able to be spun to the narrative of national security. Also, his green and 18 card just says that Trump's can spin the immigration like they did already. Yeah, that's the exact point. That's the whole premise of the argument. He did this last year and his base went up. It's exactly the correlation. He says that continual attention would have already happened and would have already triggered all the impacts. No, I'm saying every instance of Trump makes it even closer for us to get to these nuclear extinction scenarios, meaning we should already evaluate that. He says that we should be able to evaluate all impacts against the criticism. Well, you can still evaluate this impact against his affirmative. I already outweigh him. He doesn't have any solvency. Honestly, we would always vote F on that position. Go to the criticism. He tries to read you all the cards about political simulations, but he doesn't actually ever interact with my ally. I never said that you couldn't take a political situation. I'm saying that we should always go away from it because Giroux indicates that this is wrong. He tries to read this next card. He tries to read this Giroux card indicating that this if it's a prior question, we should be able to justify the structural balance. One, I already have this Giroux card's way out of date when I'm reading Giroux from 2016. He's reading Giroux from 2003. You should probably prefer what Giroux's most up-to-date evidence is, and he says we should never take that reform. He says education's happening better in this round. His next argument under this doesn't actually get warranted out. You need to actually have a connection between that, especially when you're still citing Giroux in the card, and Jiro says we should never do that. But on to the link scenario. 1. Extend across the impact, the link of the independent disad and turns it outweighs the case. Affirmative plans an instance of propping up the white supremacy, meaning you always vote him down. Next, the act still acts of giving legitimacy to the state, meaning you can already vote him down. The structural violence are happening in those apps. Next, the app uses academic basis, fear overblowing. He tries to read you all these cards saying that they're real, but the torpid evidence is still good here. We're saying motivation and research has tendencies and bias, and a mixture of meaning of definition results an overwhelming doom scenario, meaning that they have these biases to do this anyways. Next, you can extend across the torpid card that says that cyber hype is inflated in order to move the individual gain, meaning that yes, literally a guy from the army is telling you, like, look, we literally do this all the time just so we can make more money, and people are doing this so they can, like, when he's saying itself, it's probably real, versus Alan's analytical argument saying that I'm just wrong. He doesn't give you any reason on why I am. Next, like, yeah, so we extend across those links. Next, he doesn't really make an argument on all fellas go on the perm. Group all the perms together. 1, the perm would still be an active reformist, which never works. Weeks 09, reform is non-dual task involved in the country's problem, development of noble capitalism, denying expression democracy, and extend across the first row 16 evidence of political action appearance in the state, and for the trends black, the black and brown body plan always links to the criticism you never prefer the perm. Next, the creature turns in the case meaning at the no net benefit, including the case changing the K already turns the K. Next, doing the L alone is a greater net benefit for the perm since the F is already linked to the action the impact of the perm. Meaning you can never do the perm. Next, perm severance is lying with them reading plans and the trick the pursuing should be political action argument that we should never take that political action anyway. Meaning that you always the perm never works. Next, to me intrinsic the alternative rejects the liberal reform in one instance it does and does not ever take a political action, meaning that you would have to do something outside the plan. This is intrinsic to be able to get both of those. Next, he says the perm double bind. There's no perm double bind extend across my low and 12 evidence. That's it. Like, there's no double bind. Literally, at the instance where you're still doing a reformist ideology, that means you always link back to the drug criticism. It's not an instance of your case never being able to solve the status quo. It's that we should never take a political action. It's not a double bind. He's just reinserting it. Next on the framing, literally nothing in that framework indicates that we cannot weigh the K versus case. He just says that we should be allowed to. 1, he doesn't win on the normal framing of the nuclear impact, and 2nd, he still doesn't win on the criticism, meaning he will never prefer that over it. But also his, like, it's just more reform. And Jiro already answered this. If he's going to read Jiro, he should probably read Jiro that's more up to date and actually saying that we should never do these type of reformist ideologies, which his plan is doing.
Prep. It's going to be condo, then the F, then the leaks DA, then the base DA, then the K, and since Kevin didn't extend voters on vagueness, I'm not going to be going for that. On condo, you try to read an RVI, but RVIs are bad because they create a chilling effect that deters a legitimate Syrian user and wins us for being fair. But also, most of their answers are basically that we can default to the rules. We say that if we win, this is bad for fairness and education in this round. We can still win an impact on Syria that comes first. And also, its advocacies are uniquely different from other arguments, which means that it's different from kicking disads in Syria. So we're ahead on this, but we're going for the case and the real link to the K. On case, it's Senate Frost, the substantive case, which you have not directly touched. We say the defense industrial base is vulnerable now. Uniqueness controls the direction of the link. Any risk that we are able to improve it is uniquely good. We say that we do not have enough security, do not have enough red teams, and do not have enough vetting. We say that this turns the link to your leaks disad. You do not interact with the warrants for why our specific threat is real and how we are not threat constructed, which means that we are able to gain access to any list of our impacts of its things. And now on the links this ad, you say that it was a mistake to answer this case, but no card, but your argument was generic. I did read an analytic into 1AR that talked about how red teams are able to resolve this, and how there is at least a risk that the DoD can make this better. You say this is terminal no solvency, but you don't cite the rules in WOW for solvency, which means that user default to voting AF on a list of offenses. And also at the point that we win, that the threat is real, and that we have a solvency advocate for Mechanism who likely would have taken this into account, we do have a chance of being able to do this. It's Spanish enough to be able to generate offense on base, extend it to bases on Happy Now. Our card is literally from January 2019, but the big argument to go for here is that this is a real link into the criticism. You cold concede that a real link is worse than a link, which means even if the plan does not solve, even if they win the base, it deletes the A, you will be voting affirmative on the argument that the negative links into their own criticism. They cold concede that a real link is worse than a link, which means we are winning on decay, which makes decay into an independent impact that favors the affirmative. It's then the framing that has been untouched since the 1AC about how they have to generate links specifically to the action of the plan. They don't do that. They just talked about generic reform, which means that we don't link to this K, but they do link to the K, which means that at the point that they are extending the K and going for it, this is a reason to vote for the affirmative and prefer us on the argument. And also extend the permutation. We say that that if you can do the K while linking to it, we do get the perm. The links do not take out the perm, which means that any risk of solvency on case is a net benefit to the perm. They don't win any offense on substance, which means case is net benefit to perm.